Good morning. This is Uche Njoku, and welcome to this third take of this day's episode of the Sneaker Principle podcast. It is a little bit after 4:30 in the morning, January 20, January 20. Why am I trying to force time ahead? It is January the 2nd. And in a couple of hours, I'll be back in my school building to resume the second half of the school year. Second half really starts in February, but something about the winter recess that marks the halfway point, at least for me, and also for a lot of people. So this morning I want to talk to you about a leadership stance, one that a lot of school leaders have a hard time dealing with. And I'll include myself in that mix. This is something that's very, very hard to do, but yet it's very simple, and that is negotiating. Negotiating stances that make you feel like you're giving up something, especially in the school building where you have a plethora of things, so many things that are happening, so many things that you have to contend with, so many things you have to be on top of, while at the same time you may feel like you're being attacked from every corner, from every angle. One of the banes of my existence as a school leader is this whole notion of admin versus teachers. I hated it as a teacher. That divide where you're like, admin said, or admin is doing. I never understood that, because the fact that it matters, if you look at the word admin, administration, administrator, every organization has an administrator. Every organization. Somebody has to administer policies, the rules, making sure the bills are paid, making sure everything is, all the resources are there to keep the organization moving forward. And I'll say this: if you are a human being, you grew up in some sort of administrative space. The family has an administrator. That administrator is mom or dad. I'm not trying to say that as a principal or assistant principal, you are a mom or dad, but you are administrating in a space that is very likened onto being a parent. And if you are a parent, you are an administrator. If you live in your own home and you're paying your bills and you have to negotiate between a car note and electric bill and all these other things, guess what? You are an administrator. Administrators are necessary. So creating this verbiage or this belief that there's some sort of us against them, I never understood it. Yes, I might have had issues with particular people in charge because of their things that they were doing that were unfair or against policy. Yes, but having this blanket statement across the board that admin, I never understood it, either on the school level or the district level or even system wide. But however, in that role of leadership, in that role of being in charge, in that role where everything's on your shoulders, often what happens is you find yourself in a position where you're being questioned about certain things, or people are not happy, and you know you're doing the right thing. You know the thing that you're doing or better yet, it might not necessarily be the best thing, but it's the only option that you have, and there's very little wiggle room when you have a particular decision, whether it's the way you schedule a school, the way you have to administer certain policies in the school. There's even certain stances you have to take. So you always have someone who's not happy, somebody who's pushing back, somebody who's trying to rally other people. And the typical stance is just to stand there and say, you know what? I know I'm right. This is the policy. Do your worst. You want to grieve me? Go ahead and grieve me. If you want to do this, go ahead and do this. And that is the easiest stance to take, because that honestly is the path of least resistance. If you're not violating the policy, if you're not doing anything wrong, then you just say, go ahead, grieve it. Bring your union in there. Go do this. Call legal, whatever the case is, because I know I'm right. And I've done it. I've done it. Because when you're frustrated, when you have so much on your shoulders, and the last thing you need is another thing that you have to deal with, and that thing is not even something that is even a reasonable factor, a reasonable issue, and it just adds more stress to your plate. It gets more oversight coming towards you. People are calling you saying, why is this person doing this? Or why is that happening over there? And then you respond and they say, well, you're right. And you're like, but why do we even have to be here? And often it's because as a leader, and I'll say this for myself, and I'll say this for you as well if you're listening. And if you're an aspiring leader, listen to this as well. If you're a parent, listen to this as well. If you're working in any organization or entity or institution outside of education, listen to this. We're so unwilling to negotiate or even hear for possible solutions because we are angry or upset, in some cases enraged, that the person or people who are doing this thing, who are pushing back, who are calling into question, who are creating more work for you, these people, you feel like, you know what? If you're not willing to give me that common courtesy of a conversation or even a possible solution, then screw you. I'm going to stand on the rock of I am right. Policy-wise, I'm right. According to the rules, I am right. All the above and all this below says that I am right. So I am going to stand on the side of letting you look like a fool. Letting you do all this stuff for nothing. And let's be honest here. Yes, it works. I mean, it does work, but the question is at what cost? I think it's very important that the stance should be one of negotiation, one of empathy, one of taking an eagle's view of the situation and trying to figure out, like, how is this person feeling? Why are they feeling this way? What is not being said? What is unspoken that can be addressed so that both sides can come to terms, or at least come to an understanding? Because often there's a solution that makes both sides happy, and sometimes it might not make you happy as a leader, but guess what? This is the path that we chose. We chose to be in a path where often the weight, not often, all the time, the weight of success, the weight of failure, the weight of whatever the case may be falls on our shoulders. And what it is often we are trying to find ways to minimize that weight. And anything that increases that weight, it creates turmoil for us. And we know that. It creates pain for us. And people don't understand that. The pain of leadership. No one talks about that. And it's not necessarily like a physical, like I am hurting pain, but there's a certain level of discomfort that is painful. And that discomfort is psychological, it's emotional, sometimes it's spiritual. I mean, why do you think in a place like New York City, so many principals don't last that long? Only a few spaces where you have principals who can say, I've been here for 20, 30 years in the same building. But you go anywhere around the country, you will find principals who've been in the same building for 40 years. Teachers, administrators, for 40 years straight. And they're beloved. They're beloved by their teachers, they're beloved by the parents, by the community. You have parents and grandparents who are like, Mr. So-and-so, you were my teacher. Miss So-and-so, you were my guidance counselor. Then you were my assistant principal. Then you were my principal. You know all my kids. To the point where when that person retires, they will name the school after them for half a century of commitment to this community. And it's a beautiful thing. But what happens is in those spaces, I believe that the stance is community. How do we fix this? How do we make this better, not just for you, for everyone else? The problem with that is often it just requires that you carry more weight. It's something else on your table that you have to negotiate. You have to kind of figure out something that in your mind as a leader, you thought, why am I dealing with this? I don't have to deal with this. I shouldn't be dealing with this. But you should. Because the reality is if you can figure out what is upsetting this person, those people, what is making them not understand, what needs to come to clarity for them, and potentially for you, you might be able to solve something that you might not have to deal with again for a very long time, if ever again. But you have to set aside your ego as a leader. You have to stand to the side and say, okay, this field is not one for battle. This is one for compromise, for negotiation, for understanding, for listening, for empathy on both sides, then collaboration to a solution that can satisfy whatever's causing the conflict. Call to action for today is there something that you're dealing with in your school community right now as a leader? And are you willing to call a meeting with the person or parties and say, hey, let's figure this out. I'm sorry that this has had to come to this point, but let's figure this out. I'm willing to listen, and I'm willing to negotiate with you, grounded within the confines of the rules that we have to play within for us both, for the parties in this space, to come up with a solution that satisfies the needs of the community and also may satisfy your needs as well as a member of this community. I'm asking you as a leader to try that and let the community know. Did it work? Did it not work? And if you need some assistance with that, a sounding board, let me know. I'm sure I can find the time to carve out to listen to you and help you and guide you through that process. This is Uche Njoku, Sneaker Principal. Thank you again for your time this morning. Have an amazing return to the second half of the school year if you're here in New York City or any district around the country that's starting school on January 2nd. And for those of you who are just starting on the 6th, boo. No, but for real, I won't lie. I'm low-key a little bit jealous because I would have loved to have had the rest of this week off, then start on Monday. But listen, it is what it is. And today is the day back, and I'm excited to go back and see my staff and my students and, negotiate some things for the betterment of the community. All right, folks. It's Uche Njoku. Have an amazing day, and talk to you all soon. Be well.